Hi, I'm Roberta. Welcome to my kitchen. I'm here today with my mate Matt Moran. We're going to cook some lamb later, but first of all I thought we'd have a chat about Australian food, which coincidentally of course is the title of your latest book.
It is too. It is
Nice
too.
lead in there.
Yeah, it's a great lead in.
But I mean-
available wherever books stock is.
There you go. But I mean, you've been cooking how long now? Without giving too much away.
Let's say it's a good 30 odd years.
Yeah, and we've been friends for 25 of those.
Yeah.
So I've watched your cooking.
I started when I
evolve.
was 5.
Yeah, of course,
Yeah,
of course.
yeah.
And we met in preschool, right?
Yeah.
I've watched your cooking evolve,
Yeah.
and I guess we've both watched Australian food evolve.
Yeah.
So if we're talking about a month of Australian food,
Mm.
what do we want to say? This nebulous thing that's Australian food, how do we talk about it?
Look, I just think straight away when you think of Australian cuisine, it's so multicultural. And, I think Australia's been blessed in so many ways as we have, this incredible different cultures.
Melting pot.
It is a melting pot, yesterday I went out to Granville to get a Portuguese chicken.
Yeah.
I'm being deadly serious because I just wanted to go and get a Portuguese chicken. And, someone told me this place is the best, so I actually drove out to Granville and I got a Portuguese chicken.
Right.
And brought it back to the east. But it has, the world's got smaller, people travel a lot more, and it is changed. Now, I remember growing up, and, it was very much a piece of protein and 3 vegetables.
Me too.
And, you'd go to the crisper in the fridge 25 years ago, and there'd be an iceberg lettuce. Yeah.
Don't knock the iceberg.
I don't. I love iceberg lettuce, and years later there was a cos lettuce,
Yep.
and I was like, wow.
Fancy.
And now, let's face it, there's 50 different varieties of lettuces.
I used to drive to Haberfield to buy cos lettuce.
Yeah, but that is what Australian food has become. It is multicultural, and
That's
it's
kind
just
of happened in our lifetime, hasn't it?
It has, and we've been very, very blessed. Up until 30 years ago, it still was a piece of protein, 3 vegetables for a lot of people, and probably still is for some families. But
And there's nothing wrong with that if that's your family, by the way.
No, but our produce has exploded, because the world has got smaller. People like, Simon Johnson, Barry McDonald, John Sussman. John Sussman was bringing all this incredible seafood, out of South Australia.
Way back when? He goes back to the beginning, doesn't
Yeah,
he?
he does,
30,
for the
25, 30
late
years
80s, early 90s. And he is really the authority on seafood in this country. People like, Barry McDonald and Simon Johnson, who, Barry had the Paddington Fruit and Veg Market, and he was getting these guys to grow different things that you'd never seen before, baby lettuces and all that sort of stuff. Simon Johnson was bringing stuff in from overseas, and that was really, I feel as though that's where a lot of the produce was founded in Australia. Now it's just exploded. There's people like Peter Gilmore, working really closely with farmers. You talk about Lennox from, Firedoor, talking to different lamb farmers and different meat farmers, and myself being a farmer too. It is just really exploded. Now it's not just lamb we're cooking today. There are different breeds of lamb, particularly just for meat, whether it's the Hampshire or the Aussie whites, and it's just come so far, and it's just going to progress even further and further.
So are we reaching the point, if we're not there already, where we go to our butcher and like we ask for kipfler potatoes or Dutch creams, we ask for an Aussie white or a Hampshire lamb? Do you think we're getting there?
It's getting very close.
Okay.
I know there's a butcher that I go to who's very close to where I live in Randwick, and he has your normal second cross, first cross lamb that you'd buy out of Breakout, but then he also has New Hampshire lamb that is a much higher marble score than the normal lamb, and you have that choice. You can pay the premium, or you can pay the base amount. So it is getting it's like God, you think about beef, and where it is now to what it was 30 years ago.
And pork?
And pork,
All meat, really.
100%. Pork. It used to just be, sort of battery, big whites, and now it's, Berkshires and Tamworths, and you name it, you can get all the different breeds, which is really exciting.
It is exciting. And it's good for those breeds, because my understanding is a lot of those rare breeds would be extinct if they weren't being bred for the table.
100%.
So we've improved biodiversity.
Yeah. I've got 8 Berkshire sows, and we're having piglets at the moment. Oh, so cute. We don't name them. We don't name them.
Let's not go there.
But they're also chubby little things too. When you pick them up, oh, it's like I can't wait. I know that's mean, but it's true. And yeah, there was a stage where Berkshires weren't going to be around. People like Jerry Harvey that really got into it. That's just progress, and it's really exciting. I always relate back to the producers and the farmers and how lucky we are as Australian chefs. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be the chefs, or we wouldn't be the restaurants that we are today, because they're the guys that make us look good.
Well, what I love as a home cook is it starts with you guys.
Yeah.
You get the farmers growing this stuff for you, and then when there's enough of it, we get some of it.
Yeah.
And that's what I try and share with our home cooks, some unusual produce, some things they might not have seen before. And if we ask for it, then we find our local providores will start to carry it.
Yeah, and look, that's where, food in Australia is just bloomed and blossomed, and it starts with the chefs start using it, people start asking questions.
Yes.
And also food media, it's really important. What you're doing here now is really important for people learning, how to cook great produce. But, with the explosion of food media and TV, people's knowledge is much more vast than what it used to be. When I was, a young teenager, I didn't eat seafood because I thought that I didn't like it, but in actual fact I'd never eaten it. Didn't have access to it. And I look at the knowledge that, my kids had when they were 10 or 11, eating sashimi.
I was going to say, they all eat sushi in
Yeah,
preschool now, don't they?
Of course they do. And that's the difference. People's expectations are a lot higher, and people's food knowledge is a lot more from what they see on, shows like MasterChef and all those sort of cooking shows. And I think it's a great thing.
How do you feel your cooking's changed over the past 25, 30 years? Where have you gone?
I look at some of the menus that I used to do back in the day, and I'm absolutely shocked by it. Look,
it was always delicious.
Yeah,
there's a place for everything.
Of course. Classically French trained, and then worked for the Italians, the Manfredis, and I suppose, what the French training gave me was the basics of cooking.
You can't break the rules till you know the rules,
no,
right?
Absolutely, and it's really, really important. And I think by working with people like the Manfredis, it was the explosion of produce, and I learnt about produce.
Right.
That's where I first met.
The Italians do that well, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Or, Luigi Manfredi, used to bring in these bags of what I thought were weeds.
They were?
Well, no, it was actually rocket.
Oh, rocket is a wild weed originally.
But you never saw it anywhere else, and well, now you do, of course. But,
wow.
He used to do the first cuts and the second cuts, and it was, Rukla,
Yep.
and rocket, and, I'd never seen it elsewhere. And that's where I really learned about produce. So, I obviously the Paddington Inn, which was more bistro, which was, a little bit more rustic, and then going back into fine dining from where I came from. I think simplicity is a lot more in food these days than what it was. I, at one point, would get, this incredible seafood and put it through a food processor and add egg whites and cream and then try and shape it back into the form of some sort of seafood. It's where now I just let's just leave the seafood the way it is.
Simple's good, huh?
Yeah, simplicity is good, and balance, is really important too, and that's where, seasoning and acidity comes into play, And, so often I'll go out for dinner with a young chef cooking, and, I just think he hasn't quite got balance yet, but he'll understand it one day.
And that comes with practice and experience, right? So
yeah, look, and that's the thing with cooking, I remember season 1 of MasterChef, and I did the finale, and I did a couple of episodes in season 1. I ended up doing all 3 and 4 series. And I remember the young girl, and I won't mention names because she's a very dear friend and she's very well known. I did a little bit of mentoring with her when she left MasterChef. And I remember saying to me, so Matt, how long is it going to take me to learn everything? And I'm just looking at her after 25 years and saying,
a lifetime.
I've got no idea, because I still haven't learned everything, and you never do. And that's the great thing about our industry, but also is that, learning takes time. And, cooking is not something you can learn overnight, and it's always going to take time. And you know, I'm still learning.
It takes time, it takes practice,
Yeah.
and it takes mentoring, which
Absolutely.
is why we're very grateful to you giving us your time today to mentor all of us.
Yeah, well, you know,
Thank you.
I'm happy to give back these days. You know.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Cheers, Chef.
Cheers,
Here's to Australian food.
Australian food.
Cheers.